Well, a very good morning and welcome to day 4 of MACH 2022 preview week and our third day of webinar sessions. This is our final session of the week. For those of you who have been on previous ones, welcome back. And for those who this is their first session, you are very welcome. Just a reminder that throughout the presentation, you can put questions into the box, a question chat box, and then at the end of the presentation, I will come back and I will be relaying those to our presenter. Which brings neatly on to Stephen. So we have Stephen Jeffers, who is the head of EPS projects at Siemens. Stephen has spent close to 20 years helping businesses and organisations reduce energy costs and carbon emissions. He has a broad range of expertise in low carbon solutions, ranging from project development, financing, project execution, and more latterly to net zero pathways. Stephen has worked for technical solution companies, utilities, and facilities management companies, so has a unique viewpoint on how decarbonisation is impacted at an asset, building and market level. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Stephen. Thanks very much.
Thanks, James, and welcome everybody to my discussion around decarbonisation journeys. When I was asked to pull this together, I give it a little bit of thought about what should we do, but most of the organisations that I speak to within manufacturing and industry, most of the conversations start around where do we start. They have ideas and concepts around what they should be doing, what they want to do, but a little confusion about how to pull that together into a coherent strategy. So I thought I would go through what I believe is a robust strategy to help you on your decarbonisation journey. So what I will do is I will just switch off my camera whilst I go into presentation mode. So the agenda for today, I thought I'd cover some topics, some high-level topics. So where to start with your decarbonisation journey, and I always think the best place to start is working out what the value that means to your organisation. And a little bit around what is net zero. Certainly over the last 12 months, net zero, carbon neutrality, there's a lot of discussion around what it actually means, and it does mean different things to different people. So I thought I would go into what does net zero actually mean and what does it mean to us at Siemens as well. And then how to create a net zero pathway, and then also linking in one of the other of the 3 Ds around decarbonisation, decentralisation, and is digitalisation, because we firmly believe that digitalisation has a huge role to play within the decarbonisation journey. So they're the main topics that I'm going to discuss today. But a little bit about Siemens first. With you being in the manufacturing sector, you will know us as an engineering company, but quite often a lot of people associate Siemens with white goods. You know, we do make washing machines and in our past mobile phones and things like that, but Siemens have been an engineering company for a long time now, and we've been in that sustainable world for a very long time, and our foundations of our business are built upon sustainability. Our founder, Werner von Siemens, famous for saying we won't sell our future for a profit. And what that means for us at Siemens is there has to be mutual benefit for us and our clients, but also for the wider community. So everything we do has a moral compass, and that's why we're so important in the decarbonisation journey of industry. We are a manufacturer ourselves, but this is our business. We have a very wide-ranging reach across all parts of society. In healthcare, we manufacture lots of hospital equipment, scanners and so on. So you go into a hospital and a lot of the equipment will be in there, and we have a business around that. Traditional power and gas business in energy, but obviously more and more we've been a pioneer in developing renewable technologies and continue to do so. And then everything around smart infrastructure within the buildings, and we tend to refer that as the grid edge, where the grid meets the building and the interaction of the built environment and the energy system. Equally within mobility and within manufacturing, you will know as part of the digital industries where we make factories more efficient. And as I said, we're three separate businesses now, but we're still one Siemens, and we have interaction between the different businesses, as you'll see there. So moving on to the first topic, which is around identifying value of your decarbonisation journey. I think this is really important to start with, because most organisations within industry and manufacturing that I speak to and have spoke to over the years, the traditional approach of investing into new equipment and into sustainable solutions, it always comes back to finance within businesses and what are the returns on investment. That it starts with an emotional pull to do the right thing, but that fastly gets overtaken with what are the business benefits to that. So I thought I would run through all the different varieties of how do you identify and create those value pools so that your business case for decarbonisation is full and robust. So most appraisals or business cases still focus in on, if you invest £1, you will save 20p for every pound you spend on energy costs. That is still relevant, but more and more you'll start to see other benefits from investing into low carbon technology. Carbon taxes for one. Some of you will be in the European trading schemes around emissions, which obviously you want to try and avoid as much of those taxes as possible by reducing carbon emissions. But equally, there'll be benefits around reduction in other facilities costs and maintenance through implementing new, more efficient equipment. And obviously, one of the key things, which we'll come on to in a second, will be actually the lower cost of the units that you produce, making you more attractive to your customers, with which you can pass on those benefits in the sales price to the customer. So, and that then helps you to generate future value pools and other value pools around how much revenue can you actually increase through reducing carbon emissions. You'll see pressure from consumers more and more to have lower carbon products, pressure from supply chain as well. One thing that I learned recently from speaking to a well-known food producer was, for every clean branded product that they have sells sixfold compared to a non-clean product. So actually having lower carbon content in your products will actually increase your revenue streams, or should increase your revenue streams. And that then in turn gives you a greater value of your company. And there's a great article online from Morgan Stanley who show how they now value organizations and value stocks and shares with a different view around sort of 5 key metrics, which are on the screen now, and the answers to these questions will drive the value of the company and the market capitalization. So they will measure an organization based upon their absolute emissions. What are they emitting from a carbon perspective? They'll also look at the carbon intensity of the products and services. What are the plans and what are the emission reduction targets will also drive the valuation. And they've also got carbon earnings at risk, which is essentially looking at any opportunity cost of not being low carbon, so loss in revenues and loss in value if you're not doing the right thing and being low carbon. And actually, do you generate your own revenue from acting on climate change? One which isn't as obvious is around risk management, but it's essentially part of the cost that businesses pay. So if you look at the adverse weather conditions between 2016 and 2018, that actually cost 630 billion of losses, which essentially goes to insurance companies and as businesses all pay for that, and essentially that is the costs, and you can bring that down to a macro level. But my strong opinion is that by gaining understanding of all these different value pools at the beginning will allow you to build a better business case for all the future decisions when you start your journey. So really gaining an understanding of the values is crucial to that, to where to start. And then turn that into your business case. So looking at the metric, so make the metric being tons of CO2 saved, and then actually calculate what those value pools will be to you. So what is for every ton saved, what is the pound reduction in energy costs, the monetary value of reduction in carbon taxes, the increase in company value, the increase in revenue from having valued lower carbon products, profit protection from customer loyalty. Customers will buy your products more if they are low carbon and won't switch. Reduction in avoided capex. So by having investments in low carbon technology, you will actually save on other investments, which in plant and equipment, which you might not get if you have legacy and old equipment. And obviously reduction in any other operating costs. So build those value pools up and understand what that means to you so that your business case is more robust. So as I said at the beginning, I thought I would give you sort of my explanation of what does net zero actually mean, because it is a term which I've seen more and more widely used on social media and elsewhere. So there's a number of schools of thoughts, and I think it does mean different things to different people. So you can have a view which is based upon carbon neutrality, and my own view is carbon neutrality is a way of achieving a net zero position, majority through offsets and a procurement driven strategy. And whereas my view and the view of Siemens is true net zero is about reducing your carbon emissions through action as much as possible, and then having the residual value, that's the element that you can then offset or buy clean power, clean fuel. But what's really important then is whatever your position is, whether it's erring on the side of carbon neutrality or whether it's going to true net zero, is obviously take those value pools that you've calculated and match those to your ambition. So are you going to conform to what the markets and legislation is going to be? Are you going to try and perform or outperform the market and legislation, or actually are you going to be a pioneer and see how far you can actually go and be a leader within the low carbon and net zero journey? And all of that comes back to what do you value and how do you value. So if you want to be that pioneer, you need to then start to recognize, well, how does that make a difference to your business? So this is something that we do ourselves. So this is we're going through our own decarbonisation journey. We've made a commitment that we will be net zero by 2030, and this is actually from our plan. So we did this at the outset, and are currently working through this as we look to see if we can beat our targets before 2030. So do we want to be a conformist or a villain just by not doing a lot now and buying offsets? Do we want to be a role model by trying to, you know, get ahead of the game, but not necessarily outperform what our targets are? Or do we want to be a front runner by being ahead of where we are today and what our targets are for 2030, and can we beat them, or do we want to be a pioneer and absolutely lead the push for a zero carbon future? And we've taken the decision, as I said earlier, around our morals of our company, or the principles of the company, and we believe we want to be a pioneer, and we see the value in it for Siemens, and we will absolutely try and lead the drive for a zero carbon future and economy. So when we get to creating a net zero pathway, the starting point, as we said, is looking at all those different value pools. But what you'll see is that it's a very complex problem. It's a complex problem for society. It's a complex problem for manufacturers. The energy systems are more complex than they've ever been. You only have to look at your energy bill, and there'll be 17 different charges on that energy bill. Your buildings are more dynamic. Obviously, we've got challenges around Brexit and COVID. So to try and decarbonize energy systems and buildings and production processes, it isn't straightforward. And it's a complex world for you whilst you're still trying to be productive and profitable. So we try and simplify that problem. So we take those problems and we simplify it into sort of compelling solutions through a very simple strategy. We really start here in the top right hand corner around reduction. So what this means is we look at a process, or we look at a building or set of buildings, and we eliminate waste. So wherever we can to reduce the baseline, reduce the energy consumption, to make those buildings or processes as efficient as possible. That is the first step. We then move into the bottom left-hand corner around produce. And this is all around the decentralisation of the energy system. So looking at ways which we can produce clean heat and power on site through a number of different measures. So that will include solar PV, wind turbines, battery storage, hydrogen fueled CHP, and things, and all those different areas where we can help you become self-sufficient in a clean way. And as I said earlier, the true path to net zero is about doing those two things first, so that you've absolutely eliminated as much of your energy demand as possible, and then start to think about the bottom right hand corner and how do you procure that residual balance in a clean way, so that you can achieve your net zero. And then what's really important to Siemens and to me is that data-driven optimization. For, like as James said at the beginning, for nearly 20 years, I've been in this industry, and I've seen really good investments into low carbon or energy reducing technology. But then there isn't a sort of a sustainable strategy to maintain or increase those savings and benefits over time. So having data-driven maintenance, data-driven optimization is absolutely critical to ensure that the investments that you do make deliver on on the initial promise that the investment was supposed to deliver, but also to try and improve the benefits through optimizing through data. This was something I learned from an old colleague of mine, who was quite renowned within the industry for helping a well-known retailer on one of the decarbonisation programs, and it was around, you know, not everybody knows exactly what the path will look like. The detail of the pathway isn't known, but there are things that we know we need to do now. We probably know what we need to do next, and we think we know what we need to do eventually to get to the end game. But we don't know all of the answers yet, and that's so true within manufacturing, because the biggest challenge for the country and for everybody is, how do we decarbonize heat, and how do we decarbonize travel? And whilst we think we know certain of the answers, it's very difficult to really quantify how do we decarbonize high grade heat, for example, and steam production, which is so important for many of the manufacturing sectors, and it's difficult to visualize and quantify what that actually is. So having that strategy about doing something now, taking small steps now, taking some bigger steps, and then knowing what those big steps could be in the end, but working on those throughout time, so that you've actually got a strategy which delivers today, tomorrow, and as I say, eventually. You know, we talk about hydrogen and heat pumps, and heat pumps are a great solution for low grade heat, but you know, and they are improving in how you can generate higher grade heat, but not to the extent that a lot of manufacturing industries require. So looking at hydrogen fueled CHP, it is a solution which is live. It works today, but the economics are still not known, I guess. You know, and how do we produce the required volume of hydrogen? How do we store it? How do we get it around the country and to all the different manufacturing plants? That is still an unknown, but we think that is one of the answers. So coming up with a plan which is short term, medium term, and long term, with the end in mind, is a good way to look at how to start that planning process. And then this is an example of a net zero pathway that we've delivered for one of our clients. So clearly on the left hand side is, you have to know your starting position clearly, looking at what your emissions are made up from your electricity use and from the burning of natural gas. So this is looking at scope 1 and scope 2 emissions predominantly, not looking at scope 3 emissions. So, and then looking at all the different measures through doing on-site audits, looking at energy analytics to then see all the different measures across the top and the impact they would have on the different scopes of emissions. And as you'll see, there are different ways of looking at things, through lighting, air source heat pumps, solar PV, looking at what impact EV charging has, because clearly that's going to increase your electricity consumption on site, whether that's through grid or whether you can produce it yourself. Looking at hydrogen fuel cells, how you control your HVAC systems, looking at energy efficiency within the production process, and obviously there is an assumption which we know is true, which the grid keeps decarbonising every year we move on. And then the final position is do we look at power purchase agreements, carbon offsets, and so on. So that's what we deliver for our customers, and more these are the questions we are posed, or I'm posed over the years. I'd say in the last 24 months, and in particular in the last 12 months, conversations have moved away from that traditional, if we invest in energy saving equipment, what can we save, through to actually we need a coherent strategy which actually gets us from where we are today to where we want to be in the future. And this one is by 2030, but some people are asking for net zero by 2027. Some people are asking for it for a bit later, dependent upon their own circumstances. This is another element of the systematic approach that we take with our customers, so that it's well structured and everybody knows what happens next, and it's staged development of projects and opportunities. So starting at the beginning to understand that value pool, understanding what is driving you to change, to make the changes, and understanding what change means to the business. We then go into that vision creation element, which will give you that net zero pathway. So the one that we've just shown on the previous screen, through on-site audits, and that could be in single buildings or it could be in multiple buildings. And to generate and we call it net zero pathway, but we also have master plans, energy master plans, decarbonisation master plans, and then we take that into the stage 3 to generate the detailed business case. So customers will say, well, actually, what we need to do now from that net zero pathway is we need to do initiatives 2, 4, and 6. So we will then do detailed designs of those, and would generate them into a firm business case so that the customer has absolute certainty on the costs and the benefits that the solutions will deliver. And then moving through to your traditional stages of 4, 5 of delivering the project, and then entering into an operate and maintain phase. And then, as I said, going into that stage 6, which is crucial for us, is to sustain those savings, to sustain those benefits, optimize them and deliver them, but then also optimize the energy system by going back to the master plan, the net zero pathway, to find the other solutions which will keep, and then start the process again to keep delivering on those reductions in your emissions. So I thought I'd also touch on digitalisation, because this is really important to us at Siemens, and we absolutely believe that we must harness the benefits from data and digitalisation, and that will help drive better solutions. So, and it's one thing I believe in, and some of the tools that we have available to us in Siemens are groundbreaking and market-leading solutions, which I haven't actually had the benefit in other places, and you can see how powerful some of these tools are. But our digitalisation journey for decarbonisation covers 4 areas, and we start with that data capture, understanding where emissions come from, understanding where energy is used, looking at waste management, and looking at the asset condition monitoring. And we have a number of tools available for us dependent upon the circumstance. So we have tools which are building level monitoring and looking at those. We have tools which are asset based digital tools, and that could be from big energy consuming plant or energy consuming loads, or we also have the ability to connect to multiple assets within inside the process and look at capturing data from production lines as well. So that is obviously a crucial point of any strategy in reducing it, is to measure first. And where we have some really smart and innovative tools is in that solution simulation, and we create digital twins of your existing energy system, which I'll come on and give you an example in one of the next slides. And what that does is it allows us to simultaneously model all different types and options of energy generating assets in combination with each other. Previously, in other organizations a few years ago, we would have separate spreadsheets to look at a CHP, we'd have a separate spreadsheet for a heat pump, we'd have separate spreadsheets for a wind turbine or solar PV, and you know, it's quite clunky and didn't actually get the accuracy you really need. So with the digital twin platform, it's like drag and drop, you can drop thousands of different assets in and at one point to create what is the most optimum solution for an optimum blend of different assets for producing your own heat and power. And you'll see at the bottom we call that PSSD, which is our power system simulation for decentralized energy. And that's the platform that I'll come on to show you in a second. And then clearly we like to deploy technology, and whether that's energy asset generation, or whether it's demand reduction solutions, renewable assets. But we take the results from the simulation, the digital twin simulation, and use those answers, and it's the same protocols within that platform that is within our microgrid management controller, so that the simulation becomes reality. So it's controlled in exactly the same way as the simulation. So that's how we get real accuracy in what we predict, and that then obviously gives you the comfort in the business case. And obviously, moving on to the final bit, we guarantee the savings because we know how accurate our simulation and our control of the deployment of those technologies is. We underwrite the performance so that all your investments and all the values that we've created are delivered upon. So we talked about the reduction strategy. So I thought I'd give an example of the things that we look at. Clearly, we can control building level energy consumption around HVAC, lighting, and all those utility side processes. But clearly in manufacturing, the biggest energy consuming plants is usually your production processes. And traditionally, that's always been a difficult topic to address, because it's hard to interrupt and to change production processes, because that has a direct impact on revenues, productivity, and so on. So, but more and more we're moving into digital factories of the future, 4IR, and we have numerous solutions in and around digital factories. But from an energy and sustainability perspective, we have a system which is energy efficiency analytics, which connects to all types of different production processes and uses all the different types of protocols, and we start to use big data to actually start to see where is the energy being used. Is there a way of reducing the energy consumption into a process to deliver the same result? So using big data and analytics in the cloud, and plus human engineering expertise, we then start to drive real big benefits, because we're tackling the biggest problem, which is the biggest consuming problem within the factory, which is the process. And these start to deliver, quite significant savings. You can achieve up to 20% savings on your biggest load. So it's a really innovative and neat way, and non-invasive way of trying to drive efficiency within the factory space. And then we talked about, as well as the reduction strategy, we have a production strategy. So, you know, a lot of organisations have and continue to look at how to generate their own electricity. So this is an output from our power simulation software, where we're looking at deploying a number of different assets to drive down grid consumption and emissions. So just following my cursor across here, this is the profile from the original profile of electricity from the grid. And then we've looked to deploy and simulate what would that system look like if we installed 2.5 megawatts of PV, 1.8 megawatts of wind with a 5 megawatt thermal heat pump. And you can start to see, this is the yellow line here is solar PV, which at peak here can start to generate quite a lot of the demand from the system. And there's a quite neat comparison here with the wind turbine. So when it's not as sunny, the wind is allowing us to generate electricity via that. There is a slight increase or overproduction here, so it may be a case for battery storage, but also looking at what is the demand from the heat pump as well from an electricity point of view. So you can start to see how we can model lots of different varieties of different technology to enable you to visualize, simulate what the system will look like from an energy generation point of view. And that is enough for me from a presentation point of view, but I'd really like to hear some questions and yeah, over to the audience to fire some questions.
Stephen, thank you very much. That's really appreciated. We have got quite a lot of questions coming through. So what I'm going to try and do is put these in some sort of order that kind of mirrors the presentation. So hopefully we'll take them in some sort of logic. The first question we had was, what areas of the manufacturing facility are assessed? Is it just about energy consumption?
It's not just about energy consumption, but as we categorize the emissions, you categorize them into scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Scope 1 predominantly being around the burning of gases and fuels. Scope 2 is grid electricity, and scope 3 is reasonably complicated, but essentially around supply chain and logistics, the emissions that you have from those. So it's up to you as an organization to decide upon where to focus. Most organizations focus in on scope 1 and scope 2 because scope 3 is a little bit harder, but we will absolutely look at all different areas of the factory, whether that's process driven, as I showed there in one of the last slides on our energy efficiency analytics platform, looking at building level consumption, looking at what happens outside the building from a generation point of view. So to cover all bases is the best way to approach it, but ultimately it's up to you as a business to decide on the extent of your ambition.
Sure. And that, I think, ties in neatly with the next question, which says, while zero carbon is fundamental to creating a more sustainable world, how do we develop common methods of through-life measurement in order to make aligned decisions and priorities? That's both globally and locally. So I guess, is there a sort of a common way of measuring that?
Yes, and there's quite there's an international protocol for measurement and verification, IPMVP, which has been around for a number of years, which relates to energy performance contracting. That is a global methodology for measuring investments into energy and sustainability. That protocol exists. Looking at, again, scope 1, 2 and 3. There's science-based target initiative. Organizations can sign up to that, and that provides a consistent framework around how to set your strategy and how to deliver on that strategy, and what promises you're making. Clearly on a global scale, the grid emissions are different in different locations. So the UK has been really successful in recent years in driving down our emissions from grid electricity through the implementation of lots of wind generation. So the protocols can remain the same, the consistency of methodology can remain the same, but actually some of the metrics within there are going to be different, because reducing a kilowatt hour of electricity in the UK has a different carbon content than it would do in France or South Africa, for example.
Sure. The next couple of questions I'm going to try and merge together, so hopefully this still makes sense when we get to the end. It was basically about SMEs and how they can get involved. So for large companies, obviously it's easier, but for smaller companies to effectively implement a carbon strategy, I guess given the resource and funding constraints, where would SMEs start in your opinion?
I guess that it could be viewed as more difficult. Big organisations have a bigger challenge in terms of volume of emissions and the impact they have on the environment compared to SMEs. But it's the challenge is still the same. Everybody wants to reduce emissions and do the right thing, but I guess capital constraints are probably more difficult. Access to finance is more difficult potentially for SMEs as opposed to big corporates, and that's where organisations like Siemens can absolutely help, because as I said, we want to help the wider community in everything that we do, and we have our own finance bank, Siemens Financial Services, which absolutely funds SMEs investments into plant equipment, energy saving technology, and therefore we can create business cases for SMEs which are cash positive from day one. Clearly due diligence in finances and borrowing has to take place, but there are routes to funding projects for SMEs through the delivery vehicle, which could be Siemens, it could be other ESCOs out there which can help deliver the solution and fund it in a way which is cash positive for the business.
And so, given that there's a lot of companies who haven't yet started on their decarbonisation journey, do you think the UK's target for 2050 is realistic?
It's a question for Boris, maybe. My opinion is it is realistic, but as we've seen recently from the climate change committee, we're not on target. More needs to be done. So we have made a significant progress in the UK around decarbonising the grid, but there's so many challenges which we haven't found the answers to, which we haven't made the progress we need to make, which essentially falls into that decarbonisation of heat and decarbonisation of travel. We need to make bigger steps and bigger movements forward to address those issues, and the government's 10-point plan is a good move to try and address those. I think we will achieve it by 2050, but there needs to be a greater collaboration between business, communities, business to business. As you introduced earlier, I've worked in facilities companies, energy companies, solution companies, and those three sectors of industry need to collaborate more to deliver to solutions. There's often a customer protective attitude where we don't want to give up our customers to somebody else who actually might be better placed to deliver that element of the solution. So I think businesses need to collaborate more to help achieve that target.
Sure. And have government put funding behind this that companies can apply for?
Yes, there's lots of different post-COVID innovation funds available. The one which is prevalent at the moment for industry is the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund, which phase 1 closed in October last year. But that was a relatively small part of the fund, which was there was 20 million available in grants for manufacturing industry in general. Phase 2 opens in spring. I don't have the exact date from BEIS or Innovate yet, but that is a further 270 million, I think, is the value of the grant funding, which is available to all companies, SMEs, or larger organisations, which is designed to help decarbonise industrial processes. So absolutely, if you want to find funding and grant funding, which is it's not loans, it's not non-repayable, it doesn't pay for the whole capital cost, it will pay for a proportion of it depending on the size of your organisation, but it will make a significant impact on the capex cost of your project, significant reduction.
Sure, sure. Okay, the next question we've had in says, it takes a lot of power, energy and carbon to make these decarbonisation technologies. How long before the cost in carbon to manufacture is offset by the benefits? I.e. how many years for wind, solar, ground source, etc.?
So sorry, can you repeat that for me, please?
Yes, this is saying there's a lot of power and energy and carbon goes into making the decarbonisation technologies. How long is it before those are offset, if that makes sense?
I think each different technology has got its own path, but in general terms, the cost of production of clean power on the grid is reduced significantly from the investment that goes into producing wind, and it is significantly reduced and is a more efficient way now than traditional sources of energy through coal or gas. You know, the cost of implementing those is significantly lower, as is, you know, things like solar PV. The cost of the solar PV panels is significantly lower. But in terms of the carbon content to produce those, I can only speak for us as Siemens. You know, we've got our own. We're a manufacturer of equipment, and we've got our own carbon neutral pathway, which is everything that we produce will be zero carbon by 2030. As I said, we want to beat that. We want to get ahead of the game. We want to lead the industry to drive that. So that I think for me to say what other organisations within the energy sector are doing, they're all on different pathways, but more often than not, it's now more efficient, more effective to produce cleaner power than it is than the traditional coal and gas, and that will only improve over time.
Good stuff. Well, thank you very much for today, Stephen. I can see your details are on the screen. If anyone's got any questions they think of later on and they've not captured Stephen's details, by all means, feel free to email the MTA and we will pass them on. So that brings us to the end of this session. So again, a massive thank you to Stephen for joining us this morning. It's really appreciated. A recording of this session and all the other sessions that have taken place this week will be available over the next coming days, and we'll send out emails on those ones. Again, MACH Preview Week runs all the way until close of play tomorrow, so I'd invite people to have a look at the A to Z, see the kind of exhibitors that are going to be at the show, and start making contact with them ahead of next April. A reminder, as I do at the end of all these sessions, a feedback form will pop up. If you can just drop some feedback in there, it's really useful for us, both in terms of planning future content, but also the content that we will look to bring you next April at the NEC at MACH 2022. So Stephen, thank you very much again, and I'd like to wish everyone a pleasant rest of the day. Many thanks.